Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is a round 10 game from the 2016 Candidates Tournament between Fabiano Caruana, playing on the white end, and Viswanathan Anand. This is, without question, a very significant round. Going into this round 10, Caruana is a half a point behind Anand, who is currently tied for first at 5.5, along with Sergei Karyakin. So let us see how round 10 would play out. Caruana opens with c4. Anand plays in the center. e5 it is. We have an English 4 knights. Not the first time we're seeing this opening in this tournament. White goes for a kingside fianchetto. Getting some natural moves in next. Both sides now castled. And black is now very direct. e4 it is. Gives the knight a kick. Knight g5. This e4 move is basically saying I'm content with playing a position type where I give white the bishop pair. I say this because e4 is now struck at 3 times, only defended once. So black needs to take out an attacker of e4. Bishop takes knight it is. White takes towards the center. e4 needs some help. White continues to chip away at it. And e4 now cannot be maintained. So black gives it up, e takes f, knight takes, and now black plays in the center. Black looks to open up the position. Black looks to put to use their slight lead in development. Black only needs to clear out the queen and bishop before they have acquired that desirable direct connection between the rooks. Similar story for white. White only needs to clear out the queen and queen bishop. However, unlike black, white needs in fact an additional tempo in order to properly develop their bishop. It's true that there is already an open diagonal, this short c1 to a3 diagonal, but when we consider, let's say, this a3 post, or to be a bit more exact, the a3 to f8 diagonal, this is a diagonal, how might we describe it? It's kind of like a bishop staring off into space, an irrelevant diagonal, a diagonal that does not serve a useful role. His presence is not felt. He is of no inconvenience to black. This additional tempo I'm speaking of is d4. The bishop needs to come out along the c1 to h6 diagonal to really serve a useful role, potentially pinning the knight to the queen, maybe pinpointing c7. This is something white does right away. d4 it is, ignoring the fact that c4 was under fire. Black says, show me, grabs the pawn. Where is the compensation? White has the bishop pair. White also has a central pawn majority, 2-0 majority in the center. Black is a pawn up. If white does not want to play this position where they are down a pawn, white can consider capturing on d5, and, well, keep in mind that this is not a developing move, but another way to look at it is that it is helping black, it is promoting the black development. Black can recapture and bring a new piece to life. White's focus is on development at this stage. d4 hits right away, and black scoops up the pawn. Pop quiz to you. Of the 64 squares in this current position, which one is most important? If you'd like to, go ahead, pause the video, see what you can come up with. Okay, the most important square in this current position is e4. How do I know this? The pawns told me. We need to properly assess the pawn structure all the time, but especially after some pawn capture, This is a square that has been weakened with black's last move. This is what might draw our attention to e4 if you did not come up with e4 or even know where to start answering that question I just threw at you. Assessing the pawn structure will will help us to know what squares are important in any given position. Why is this such an important square? White has a central majority. Identifying majorities in a game, white has this central majority in the center. Sometimes it'll be kingside, sometimes it'll be queenside. White would really like to get this pawn up to e4. Why? So that his presence can actually be felt. So that he can actually pose some danger, maybe kick the knight from his strong post on f6. He needs to get rolling, would like to get rolling, wants to play a useful role in the game. For as long as he sits on the second rank, he's of no bother to black. And as it stands right now, black has good control over the e4 square. The knight and rook are controlling it, and if white is not careful, bishop f5 comes, black develops, and increases the control over e4. Why am I paying so much attention to this? It's because this is what provokes the next several moves. There's a lot of attention focused on e4 in these next moves for both sides. What does white do? First plays queen c2, develops. It's one way to view it. Another is that it's there to directly control e4. That's two. A third, it's preventing black from developing to f5, which would reinforce their control over e4. White wants to get the e4 move in. As it stands right now, the e2 pawn, or really just the e pawn, is backwards. He's a liability. He needs to get rolling. Black follows with h6, prevents a pin against the knight. That was my initial impression, I must say, is that h6 stopped bishop g5. But also, something else that's worthwhile to note is that the knight may actually be a great bother to black if he gets to g5. If I'm to just make a passing move to illustrate, knight g5 actually throws a strong punch. The idea to capture the knight and then sweep in with the queen. Well, we could then see bishop to a3 later actually being useful at that stage. But yeah, there's some idea even connected with the knight, not only the bishop getting to g5. Anyhow, that's ruled out altogether. Black plays h6. Bishop f4, connecting the rooks. This move, I know it's the dark square bishop, but he is actually influencing indirectly the e4 square. How is this so? Well, he's securing the e5 square for a knight jump. And a knight jump to e5 is allowing the bishop to see e4 directly, and a knight on e5 is interfering with black's rook. If white has a knight on e5, the rook cannot see the e4 square directly, which allows white to get the e4 advance in. So anticipating this, black anchors the knight into e4 right away, and does this so that he can get the bishop to f5. White centralizes a rook. Bishop f5 is in. And now we have knight to e5. This knight is hit twice. Knight d6. And now e4. One may think about this capture. It's quite tempting, but probably not a good idea, because what would follow is e4. Now both minor pieces are under fire. Black has to go in for capturing the rook. Pawn takes bishop, and this knight will be won. Could even insert a computer suggesting capturing here first, and then capturing the knight. White has the two minor pieces for the rook, and yeah, probably not a good variation for black to go into. The two minor pieces here are very strong, especially this knight on the e5 square. Maybe even possibilities to break down the king here. Still going in for some attack. Anyhow, black doesn't go in for this capture. Instead, knight d6. e4 can now be played. Bishop h7. And now queen to e2. My initial impression of queen e2 was to track down c4. It's now hit twice. But white has something else in mind, as we will soon see. Black plays knight to e7, gets out of the way of knight takes knight. Suppose at this stage here, knight takes knight is played. After b takes, this is a little bit vulnerable, right? We have the knight and the bishop striking at it. It's a little bit awkward. White wants to keep this knight around on e5. Not so quick to give it up. Queen e2. Knight e7. And now a lot of time was spent in this next move by white, who, by the way, hasn't really spent much time, actually. I forgot to mention this. At this moment here, these first 14 moves, Caruana basically really well prepared. He actually has more time now than, he's actually gained some time. Start off with 100 minutes, gain 30 seconds with each move. He has about 104 minutes. So he's still maybe in his preparation, in other words. This was really his first think, this move 15, knight e5. Okay, we got e4 in, queen e2, knight e7, and now a real good chunk of time, 35 minutes on this next move, move 18. Caruana plays bishop takes h6, a piece sack, ripping open the black king side, weakening, to be a bit more exact, the dark squares. Black doesn't have a dark square bishop, and if you can make that g-pawn flinch, your dark squares are permanent holes. And that's exactly what happens. G takes, f6, h6 are now very weakened and potentially targeted by a knight. But first off, it's the queen who pinpoints these weaknesses, one of the weaknesses, h6. And we see the point now of queen to e2. The intention wasn't to focus on c4 and get the material back, but rather to shift over towards the king side. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen here. How are we looking material-wise? White is down a full minor piece, but has some very active pieces, no doubt. The rook pinpointing f7, strong knight, strong queen. Black's pieces, the queen and queenside rook, not really playing a useful role. And white could maybe think about scooping up the h6 pawn and rook f4 to h4 ideas. Black needs to be very careful. This is a strong queen position. This is something black looks to address right away. Black seeks a queen exchange and is open to giving some material back right away. Knight e to f5 is freeing the way for queen to g5. If I'm to just highlight one other move in this position, such as rook to f8, reinforcing f7, there can, as mentioned, follow the capture on h6, and then these rook f4 to h4 ideas are a possibility. Suppose knight takes e4. Computer is already citing moves like bishop takes knight, or even knight takes f7. Let's consider this one. Bishop takes, rook f4, and the computer is already saying that you can't even move the bishop, suggesting queen to d6. Suppose black tries to hang on to the material. Not even sure where to go with the bishop. Here, it's rook to h4. Pretty much, if you move the bishop wherever, it's going to be rook to h4, and this is big trouble. You're not stopping queen to h8 mate for long. So this is just a very strong idea, is what I'm getting at. Having this queen take on h6, with then these rook up and over ideas, f4 to h4, maybe even g4. So black anticipates this pressure, gives the material back, knight e to f5, looking for queen g5, offering a queen exchange. White scoops up the knight. Black goes in for queen g5, and there's now no more attack against the black king. But white still maintains a really strong knight on the e5 square, and when we consider the material, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the material is balanced. So really we have to now consider these positional features. There's not an imbalance with regard to material, but again, this strong knight on e5 with f6, white's 22nd move, he's now not going anywhere fast. He's not going to be dislodged anytime fast. f6 could maybe be played if white wasn't playing f6 himself, so white opens up this diagonal for the bishop but is securing the knight on e5. That's the most important thing to note with this f6 move. It's okay to open up this diagonal for the bishop. We want to make sure we secure our knight on e5, and by securing the knight on e5 we could take it one step further. What is that doing? It's interfering with black's rook. It's not allowing him to have a say in the position and be activated, let's say, to the second rank. So what follows is knight to e4, and this move is a step in the wrong direction for black, this knight to e4, move 22. And after knight e4 we have rook f to e1, and black goes in for knight takes pawn, and as we'll soon see, black is really going in a wrong direction with this move sequence. A better try at this stage, instead of knight to e4, is to shut down this diagonal with the move c6, not allow white to see the b7 pawn directly, to kind of free up the knight so that he doesn't have to defend b7. c6 would have been a better try, with maybe then an idea of knight to b5, focusing on c3 only at that point. But first c6 to stop ideas of grabbing the b7 pawn, which eventually falls in the game. So what was played at this point, not c6, that would have been better, but knight e4 was played on this move 22. Rook f to e1. Knight takes c, rook c1. Knight b5, doing something other than that, going pawn hunting some more. Yeah, this knight is kind of running short on squares. Rook takes c4, he's now, it's kind of tough. He's soon to be trapped. After c6, there's even d5 and some lateral. The rook can shift over to the king side, he's out of play. If ever it takes, the bishop is brought to life. f7 is a great bother. Yeah, that's a big issue here for black. Out of play knight, and all the white pieces are doing a very good job. And don't forget about the f6 pawn. He's significant for sure. Great depth and potential pivot point on the e7 square. Doesn't go for knight takes pawn. It was knight takes knight to b5. What now follows is bishop takes b7, and that is a very significant pawn, to say the least. That's the heart of the queenside structure, and with it now being absent, look at the queenside structure. Everything's isolated, a case of double isolated c-pawns. It's big trouble for black. The rook is hit. What's tried is rook a to d8. This allows bishop c6 with the fork, and white is now picking up the exchange. Knight takes pawn, bishop takes rook. Why did black allow that? What might have been better? Is rook to b8 even better? Not so sure about that. Bishop c6 can still hit. And where are you going with the rook if you don't want to lose the exchange? Tough to suggest something. Rook here. You can grab the knight and then play your knight into c6, and this is just an enormous piece. This rook unfortunately has to stay in the back rank, otherwise rook here is mating. Black doesn't have that flight square. This is a very strong pawn, taking away the g7 square. Rook here, rook takes c4, look at all of the white pieces. White isn't down a pawn, but just has a stranglehold over this position, and a rook that is completely passive, and the white rooks can still easily improve. So what is tried is rook to d8 in the game. Black gives up the exchange. King f2, improve the king position, gets out of any knight f3 tricks. Knight c2, rook e to d1. Rook takes knight, runs into a mate in 2. So bishop e4, knight c4. Black needs to get rid of this pawn. That's what he's attempting to do. White throws in a check. And now king to g1, and this is pretty much stopping rook takes pawn. Well, black goes in for it anyway, but you have to get that pawn back. It's really tough to suggest something here for black. That's what he goes for, rook takes pawn. And after rook to f1, black resigns. How do things stand right here? The rooks are going to have to be exchanged, as otherwise white is picking up another pawn with check and just getting active along the 7th rank. So black really doesn't have anything to fight for here. The rooks are going to be coming off. When you're down the exchange like that, you really would like to keep another rook on board. It helps out some with coordinating your pieces. This knight is a little bit awkward now, and this rook is soon to be very active on the 7th rank, picking up these weak queenside pawns. As an example, if the king is approaching towards the center, we can have rook d7. We could see the c-pawn dropping soon, maybe even the f-pawn converging on f7. And this is a pretty easy, this would be a pretty easy technical task for Caruana from this point on. So, seeing this, Anand simply resigned at this point here after rook to f1. And with that, we have a big change in the standings. Caruana moves up to first. He is now at 6 points, tied with Sergei Karyakin, with 4 rounds to go in this candidates tournament. So certainly very exciting. A lot of shifts going on in this tournament, and we'll see how it all plays out and who's going to be the challenger for Magnus Carlsen. So as usual, feel free to leave any feedback to this video in the comments section below, and I hope you got something out of it. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.